That bird is watching you. Not because you have food, not because you're moving, because it knows who you are. And it's known for a lot longer than you think. Every time you walk outside, every phone call on the porch, every time you call someone's name across the yard, there's a surveillance system running around you. They hear your voice. They recognize you. They store it. And some species, they share that information with each other. You have a file in the heads of more birds than you realize. In part 3 of this video, I'm going to show you the one species that actually broadcasts information about you to your entire neighborhood. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. This is documented behavior backed by research, and once you know it, you will never look at a crow on a rooftop the same way again. Stay to the end, because the last thing I cover is something you can test yourself. Today, in your own yard. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe right now. This is exactly the kind of content I make every week. And before we go any further, drop a comment right now. Just one word. What bird shows up near you the most? One word. That's it. I read every single one. And if you know someone who drinks their coffee outside every morning, send this to them. They'll understand why in about 10 minutes. But before we get to the crow, you need to understand why any of this is even possible. And the answer is something the human ear will never be able to do. Think about the last song you listened to. You heard the melody, the beat, maybe the words. Now picture a bird sitting 5 feet away from you while that same song plays. It hears everything you heard, plus every micro vibration between the notes that your ears filtered out completely, the tiny gaps, the breath before a word, the tension underneath a sound that you didn't even know was there. That's not an exaggeration. That's anatomy. A bird's auditory system processes sound at 1/100th of a second. Yours processes it at 1/20th, 10 times slower, which means when you speak, what lands in your ears as a single sentence lands in a bird's brain as something closer to a full paragraph. Every syllable stretched out. Every layer exposed. That technical gap has consequences you haven't thought about yet. Here's what that means in practice. Every time you open your mouth outside, birds in range are picking up at least 3 layers of information from your voice. Not 1. 3. The first layer is body size. Deeper voices signal a larger body. Larger bodies have meant danger for millions of years of bird evolution. That reflex doesn't turn off just because you're standing next to a feeder. The second layer is emotional state. Fast, high, clipped speech reads as agitation. Slow, low, even speech reads as calm. Birds are reading your emotional state through your voice with an accuracy that would make most people uncomfortable to know about. The third layer is identity. If they've heard you before, they recognize you. Not vaguely, not probably, specifically you. All of that from a single sentence, before you've even come into view. Now here's the part that happens every single day in your yard, and you've never once caught it. The moment your voice reaches a bird, something happens in under a second. Science calls it an acoustic startle response. But that name makes it sound bigger and more dramatic than it actually is. It's not a flinch. It's not flight. It's something much smaller and much more interesting. It's a freeze. Half a second. Maybe less. Everything stops. The eating, the movement, all of it. In that half second, the bird is running your voice against its memory. One question. That's it. Known or unknown. If the answer is known and safe, it goes right back to what it was doing. Sometimes it moves a little closer. If the answer is unknown, it pulls back, quietly. No panic, just a little more distance, and it watches you. You have seen this happen hundreds of times in your life. The pause that was almost invisible. The slight shift before everything went back to normal. You just didn't know what you were looking at. So far, this sounds like a neat nature fact. Birds hear well. Birds remember voices. Interesting. Maybe worth mentioning at dinner. But here's where it stops being a neat fact and starts being something that genuinely changes how you think about the space around you. Because some species don't just remember your voice, they do something with it. Start with the smallest bird in your yard. The sparrow, the chickadee, the little ones that seem to barely notice you exist. Here's what's actually happening inside their heads when you walk outside and say something. Your voice enters their brain through the same neural pathway used for alarm calls. Not a similar pathway? The same one. Which means, neurologically, your voice and the sound of an incoming predator are processed through the same gate. First time they hear you, they're on alert. That makes complete sense. You're an unknown variable, and unknown variables get treated as threats until proven otherwise. But here's what happens after they've heard you enough times with nothing bad following. They stop pulling back. And then something you wouldn't expect. They start orienting toward you instead. Not because they like you. Not because they've decided you're friendly. Because they've done the threat math enough times that you've been officially reclassified. You're not a danger signal anymore. You're a known quantity. In their world, that's not a small thing. That's a status you had to earn. They just never told you when it happened. Robins work completely differently, and honestly, they're a little cold about it. When a robin hears your voice, it's running one calculation. Where is this person going? How fast are they moving? Is there any chance they're about to disturb the soil near me? Because disturbed soil means worms. And worms are basically everything to a robin. Calm voice, slow movement, no sudden sounds. The robin does the math and follows you. Not because it trusts you, because the probability of a meal just went up. That's the beginning of the relationship. Pure transaction. Nothing personal. But then something shifts. After a few months of the same voice showing up, and nothing bad ever happening, the robin stops waiting to calculate. It just comes. Faster than before. Closer than before. Less hesitation between hearing you and moving toward you. Your voice has quietly crossed a line in that bird's brain. It stopped being a signal that meant maybe there's food. It became a signal that means safe. Those are two very different things. And that shift happened without any effort from you. Just repetition. Just consistency. Just showing up and being the same person every time. So, sparrows reclassify you. Robins follow you around the yard doing profit calculations and then accidentally start trusting you. Both of those are surprising. Both of those are worth knowing. But I told you at the start of this video that one species does something completely different with the information it collects about you. It doesn't just remember, it transmits. And if you've ever messed with one of them, shooed one away, made a loud noise near one, anything. I'm sorry to tell you this, but your neighborhood already knows. Crows don't process your voice as background noise. They process it as personal data. Research out of the University of Washington, conducted with people wearing masks to separate identity from behavior, confirmed something that takes a moment to fully land. Crows can distinguish between individual human voices with an accuracy that approaches facial recognition. Not loud voices versus quiet voices. Not men versus women. You, specifically. Individually. And once a crow has identified you, it places you into one of two categories. Safe or threat. That's it. No middle ground, no maybe. No provisional status that gets reviewed later. You go in one column or the other. And that classification drives every interaction that follows. Here's the part that makes people stop and replay it. When a crow decides you're a threat, it doesn't keep that information to itself. It broadcasts a warning. Specific. About you, to every crow within range. And the other crows learn from it, not from meeting you, not from watching you do anything, just from receiving the signal. That's enough. One crow's assessment of you becomes the working assumption of every crow that heard the call. Right now, your voice may already have a file in the crow community of your neighborhood. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. A file, and that file gets updated every single time you go outside and make a sound. Now, here's where it stops being surprising and becomes something closer to unsettling. Researchers tracked crow behavior toward a masked person over 5 years. 5 years later, the crows still recognized the mask, still responded to it, still treated the person wearing it according to the original classification made half a decade earlier. Not 5 days, not 5 months, 5 years. And during that time, something else happened. The crows that had never encountered the mask themselves, the younger ones, the ones born after the original incident, they responded to it too. The behavior had been taught, passed down. A lived experience from one generation became inherited knowledge in the next. That's not memory anymore. That's culture. But here's what doesn't get said enough. This network runs in both directions. If a crow classifies you as safe, that gets broadcast too. That gets learned too. That gets passed down too. Every time you walk outside and just exist without causing harm, you are making a deposit into a reputation you didn't know you were building. In a community that has been paying closer attention to you than you ever realized. Your standing in the crow world of your neighborhood is being built right now, day by day, whether you're thinking about it or not. Which raises a question I haven't seen anyone ask directly. If they've been building a file on you this whole time, what does that file actually say? Your file didn't start the first time you consciously interacted with a bird. It started the first time your voice reached one. Maybe it was the first morning you stepped outside with coffee at the place you're living now. Maybe it was the first phone call you took on the back porch. Maybe it was the first time you called your dog's name across the yard. Each one of those moments, each sound you made, logged. You didn't have to do anything special to start the file. You just had to exist and make noise. That was enough. But here's where it gets strange. And I mean genuinely strange. Research tracking bird behavior in residential areas documented something that most people hear once and then need a second to accept. Birds that have become familiar with a household begin responding to voices from inside the house through the glass before the person ever comes outside. Not when you open the door. Not when you step onto the porch. While you're still inside, having a normal conversation, making breakfast, on a call. They hear it, they recognize it, and they prepare. So the next time you walk outside and there's already a bird sitting on the branch closest to where you usually stand, or one shows up within seconds of you coming out, understand what actually happened. It didn't just arrive. It was already there, waiting, because it heard you through the window and knew you were coming. Take a second with that. Every conversation you've had outside over the years, every time you called your kids in for dinner, every argument that drifted out the back door, every time you laughed at something on the phone in the driveway, every quiet morning where you just stood there not saying much, all of it heard, all of it processed, all of it filed away into a picture of who you are, built by creatures living a parallel life in the same space you move through every day. You have a profile. You've had one for a long time. The question is what it says. And for most people, the answer is a lot better than they'd expect. The file birds have built on you is not a list of mistakes. It's a record of consistency. Every morning you came outside around the same time, they learned that rhythm. Every time you showed up and nothing dangerous happened, your credibility went up. Every time your voice came through calm and even and unhurried, they registered the same thing. This one is stable. This one is predictable. This one does not require alarm. You didn't have to earn that through any deliberate effort. You just had to show up as yourself, repeatedly, without causing harm. In their world, that's enough to be trusted. There's a moment a lot of people have had but never had a name for. You're working in the yard or sitting outside reading, and a bird lands closer than usual. Not at the feeder. Not because there's food near you. Just close. You go still, it stays. A few minutes pass, then it flies off, and you didn't know what to call that. Now you do. That was the moment that bird decided you were familiar enough, safe enough, woven enough into the fabric of its space that maintaining distance was no longer necessary. It had been watching you, assessing you, building a picture of you for months. And in that moment it arrived at a conclusion. You were accepted. By a creature that doesn't give that out easily. That's not a small thing. Here's one more piece of evidence that this relationship is more real than most people give it credit for. When you get sick, your voice changes. Lower, slower, different rhythm, different texture. Birds notice. Field observations have documented this consistently. Birds that are familiar with a person, when they hear that person's voice sounding off, pull back slightly. More cautious, more watchful. Longer before they return to normal behavior around you. Not scared, not alarmed. Just registering something specific. This person sounds different today. And when your voice returns to normal, they return to normal too. They were waiting for you to sound like yourself again. Every day you live in your home, you are part of an ecosystem you cannot see. No bird feeder required. No effort. No awareness on your part at all. Just your ordinary presence. Your consistent rhythms. Your voice moving through the air around a place you've made your life. That's all it took to build something real with the creatures living alongside you. For most people, the file looks like this. This one is not a threat. This one comes and goes on a schedule. This one belongs here. You earned that, without knowing you were doing it. There's something you can do today to test everything I just told you. Go outside. Somewhere birds are nearby. Stand still for a moment. Then say something out loud in your normal voice. Doesn't matter what, just talk. Then watch what happens immediately after. Not what the birds do next, what they stop doing. That half second of stillness before everything continues. That's the freeze. That's the moment your voice is being run against whatever file they have on you. Known or unknown. Safe or reassess. Once you know what you're looking for, you will see it every single time. It was always there. You just didn't have a reason to notice it before. If you want to take it one step further, try this. Go back outside and say something in a different voice. Higher pitch. Different rhythm. imitate someone else. Change it up enough that it genuinely sounds like a different person. Then watch how the birds that already know you respond to that. More distance. Slower to come back. Less orientation toward you than usual. Because that voice isn't in the file. It's unrecognized. And unrecognized in their world means starting the evaluation over from zero. That's not the birds acting strange. That's their recognition system working exactly the way it was built to work. You just ran a controlled test on it without any equipment. And if you don't have a yard, if you live in an apartment or somewhere birds aren't a constant presence outside your window, this still applies to you. Anywhere you show up regularly and make noise. The birds in that space have been listening. The route you walk every morning. The coffee shop where you sit outside. The park where you run. You have a file in those places too. You just never thought about it that way until right now. The next time you walk outside and say something. Anything. Good morning to nobody in particular. Your dog's name. A comment about the weather to yourself. Know that in the space around you, birds are running your voice through their memory. And for the ones that already know you, the answer comes back the same way it always does. This one, known, not a threat, belongs here. You didn't have to do anything extra to earn that. You already have it. If this video made you look at your backyard, your balcony, or the sidewalk you walk every morning a little differently, then it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching this from? And is there a bird anywhere near you right now? Look around before you answer. I'll wait. If you want to see what comes next, subscribe, because the next video goes somewhere even fewer people have looked. What birds actually do when they sense that you're sad. Not what you'd expect. And if you know someone who sits outside alone with their coffee in the morning, send this to them. They should know they're not as alone out there as they think.